Welcome back. This is our next lesson in the Introduction to Database course. So what I want to do in this lesson is to introduce the idea of a join. In the next lesson, which is next week, we will continue dealing with joins. But for now, I want to introduce to you the ideas. Okay, so I went ahead and I created a database named school. All right, so I suggest that you do the same before you proceed with following this video. Okay, and I also have this file here. I will this will be posted, so you will have access to it. You don't have to type it. So let me open it in Visual Studio. Okay. All right. So I have this table here named students. Okay, and normally we use serial for the primary key. Okay, but because I want to explain to you starting off in a simplistic manner, I decided to use integer to make it easier for me to explain to you what we are doing. Okay. So I have this students table. It has 3 columns: a student ID, a first name, a last name. And because the student ID is integer, I will be responsible for putting in that value. Okay. If it were serial, I didn't have to worry about it. Okay, so I'm going to insert into students in the 3 columns the ID, which is an integer. Remember, integers are numbers, so they do not carry quotes. Okay. Text, yes, they need quotes. So Joe Smith, Jane Sosa, and Jill Sanchez. So I am making 3 rows. Also, I am creating the second table called grades. And what does grades have? It has 2 columns. One of them is the student ID, again integer, and the other one is the grade. For example, A, B, B plus, D, and so on. All right. And so here I insert 3 rows. All right. So the idea is this. Okay, and I want you to understand. These are 2 separate tables. Okay, they are 2 disparate tables. They're different. Okay. So let me load this. Okay, so remember, I'm in the right directory. Okay, make sure you're in the directory where the file is located. Okay, good. Okay, so it's telling me I am in SQL right up here. Okay, so it means I can say \i. What's the name of the file? Students.sql. Okay. All right. So the table did not exist, so you didn't have to drop it. No. All right. Okay. So let's check. Let's say select all from students. Great. And now let's look at the other table. Select all from grades. Excuse me. All right. So my question to you is, and this is a question that we want to solve. And this is the reason why we have joins, which is the topic you are learning right now, at this very moment, by watching this video. What if I ask you, what if I was the principal and I told you and I said, can you tell me what grade Joe Smith got? Okay. Well, we could look at it and we could say, well, Joe Smith is 22 to 1. So let me look for 22 to 1. Okay. And you will tell the principal, Joe Smith got an A. That's easy. But what if it's 5,000 students? Or in UB's case, 4,000 plus students. Will you manually check each one and say, okay, that ID is for Jenny. Let me look on the other table and see if I can find Jenny's ID and see the grade. You won't, right? It's too manual. So what we want to do, we want to tell the database, the DBMS, Postgres, we want to tell Postgres, these are two separate tables, but I would like for you to join them. I would like for you to put them together so that I could see the student, the name, and their grade. Okay? And so Postgres will be the one who actually does the comparisons. So Postgres will go in and it will say, okay, student ID 2021, 221. Okay, is that in this next grades table? Yes, it's there. Okay, so what do they want me to return? They want me to return the ID and the first name and the last name. And Postgres will do that for every single row. No matter if it's 3 rows, no matter if it's 3,000 rows or 3 million rows, okay, or a billion rows. If you have something like Amazon or any of these companies where they have billions and billions of rows of data, right? So let's answer this first question. We want to see the ID and the student name and the grade. Okay, so how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to write my queries in a file. Uh-oh. All right, let's change the name. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to say touch, and I'm going to call that file joins. All right, that name is good. Joins.sql. Okay. All right, it's an empty file. So let me open it in Visual Studio Code. Okay, good. So I will now show you how to answer this question. So it's a comment, an inner join returns a row, okay, if the row matches in all the tables. Okay, so in other words, if I have a match here, so I have this value and I could check for this value, is it? Yes, it's a match. Once it's a match, then the DBMS knows that it is something that should be returned. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to start from the bottom just for you to, well, actually, I'll start from the top. Makes sense. I'm going to say select, okay, select, give me back, student underscore ID, give me back first name, give me back last name, and give me back grade. Okay, but I also want I want to see the student ID from this table, and I want to see the student ID from this table. All right, but you notice you have a problem. Both of them are called student ID. So the DBMS will get confused. Which one do you want? Do you want the one from the students table, or do you want the one from the grades table? So to differentiate, I'm going to put another student here. Okay, let's put the here. Okay. So which one is it? Well, I want you to think back to last week where we used the as keyword, where we created an alias for a table. So I'm going to create an alias for my two tables. Okay. And so I'm going to say from students as S. Okay. So capital S, oops, capital S. So I will now say S dot student ID, S dot first name, S dot last name. Okay. And we could probably use G for the grades table. Okay. So I'm going to say from student as S. Okay. And this is the part that is new. Inner join grades. But we're going to call grades G. Okay. What did I just do here? When the DBMS sees this inner join command, okay, it knows that it needs to take these two tables and do something with them, right? So it's gonna make one table from these two tables. It's gonna join them. However, we need to tell the DBMS how to join them. And since we want the DBMS to be able to check the IDs, we will join based on that column. And so to specify that, we say on. And then I'm going to say S dot student ID is the same as G dot student ID. Okay? Semicolon. All right. So again, everything we need, we're going to specify that we have to join those two separate tables using inner join. And we have to say what the DBMS should be looking for. What should be the two common things? Well, we're telling it that it should check the student ID in the first table and check the student ID in the second table. And if they're the same, then I want them. I want those. Okay. All right. So let's see how this plays out. So I'm going to load my joins.sql, which will execute the query, right? Okay, and there we have it. Now, if the principal asks you for this question, for this information, you can just do this query, this join, and you will see, okay, student ID, Joe Smith, right? Correct ID, A, right? 2022 3, that's Jill Sanchez. Correct ID, of course, D plus. All right, and so that's the whole reason why we use the join command, to be able to put back the tables, to be able to join tables so that we could read across them. Okay, that's the inner join. Now, there are different types of joins, and so to demonstrate the other type of joins, I will insert a new row of data. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. Let's assume that we have a new student. Okay, a new student. So I'm going to say insert into students, and of course student ID, right? First name. Normally would put this in the file as well, but since it's only one, I don't want to put it in the file. names, file name, not last name, sorry. All right, so insert into students, student ID, first name, last name, good. Values, let's say 2022 4, and let's call this person Jenny. Let's call this person Sue, last name. Okay, and my semicolon. If you don't put a semicolon, it will keep showing you the error, right? Okay, so I put my semicolon. Okay, so one row added, and I could check again. I could say select all from students, and there I have it. Now, let's say that I was so busy I forgot, or let's say it's a new student. Jenny is a new student. So Jenny doesn't have any grades. Okay. So if I look at the grades table, okay, I'll have to type it. Yeah, here. If I look at the grades table, I don't see Jenny's ID, right? Okay. So let's imagine that you have your students table, of course, and your grades table. And your principal comes back to you the next day and says, can you show me all the students along with their grades, and show me also all those grades that are missing, right? So the principal wants to know which student doesn't have any grades. Which student doesn't have any grades? In other words, which student in the students table has a missing row in the grades table, right? Which student does not have any grades? And we again can do a join for that. However, we have to tell PostgreSQL the type of join. It's no longer an inner join, because an inner join will have to make them match. Has to be one in student, has to be one in grades. I don't want that. The principal wants to know who is in students but not in grades, because we want to find out which students don't have grades. So I'm going to copy and paste this, and I'm going to call this a left outer join. Okay, so a left outer join determines what is in the first table but not in this second table. Okay, so I am going to say, okay, give me student ID, give me first name, give me last name, give me ID, give me grade. However, I cannot do an inner join. I will tell the DBMS, give me a left outer join. Okay, so what this really means is I want you to match by the ID. Okay, however, if you find out that there is an ID in students that is not in grades, then let me know. Okay, let me know. Okay, so let's save that. And notice it's the left that is like is the main table. Okay, is the main table. All right, so let's run this. All right, and so this is the original inner join. Okay, but this is my left outer join. So how do you know this, right? Yes, they have grades, they have grades, they have grades, but Jenny doesn't have any grades. And so the DBMS will simply leave those blank. Leave those blank. All right? And so you can see, the principal can see, or you can tell the principal, so far, Jenisu doesn't have any grades. Okay? And that could be any number of students. What if it was 25 students? You could see that. Some of you might be asking, well, can I only see the ones with the missing grades? Yes, you can. Okay? And all you have to do is to specify a where clause. You can say where, okay, the grade uh, student ID is null. Okay? So if there isn't a student ID that matches with one in the students, right? So if you look here, this student ID is missing, right? It's missing. We have it in here, but it's missing from this table. And so that's what I mean when I say where in the grades table, the student ID is missing. That's what I mean by is null. So if I run my queries again, let me clear my screen. We're going to get back one row because this is the only row where there is the row in the students table, but there's a missing row in the grades table for that student. Okay, and this is very helpful. If you have 5,000 students and you run this query and you realize that there are 200 students with no grades, that's something you'd want to know. All right. Now, on the flip side, we could find out if there are rows on the grades table that are not in the students table. So maybe somebody mistakenly inserted a row in the grades table, but did not insert a row in the students table. Okay, so we have a grade for a student that doesn't exist. We'd want to know that. All right, we really want to know that. So let's look at that. Okay, let's see how we can simulate that. Okay, so let's add a new. So let's say insert into grades values, and I'm going to do this on one line. 20 to 5, and this person got an F. Okay. Okay. So if I select from grades, we got an F. All right. Obviously, if you notice, there is no 2025 in my students table. There's no student with that ID. Okay. So let's see how we can remedy this problem. All right. So to remedy that, we will not do a left outer join. We will do a right outer join, right? Which makes sense. A right outer join determines what is in the second table, but not in the first table. So I want everything. All right, let's remove this. I don't need this right now. We'll do that later. I want everything, but it's gonna be a right outer join. Okay. So we, right? Okay. So we want to see what is in grades, that is not in students. All right, let's give it a try. All right, so notice because the student portion is missing, it's just a blank. It's empty, right? So we have a grade, but we don't have a matching student. And we could narrow this down. We could say, just give me those rows, okay? But it has to be where S is missing, okay? And I hope that makes sense, right? And so we get this row. Okay, now there is finally the other option where we want the DBMS to give us everything. If it's missing from the first table, give it to us. If it's missing from the second table, give it to us too. Okay? And so, in essence, we're asking the DBMS, show me all students who don't have grades, and show me all grades that don't have matching students. And how do we call that? We call that a full outer join. Okay, full outer join determines what is in the second table but not in the first table, and vice versa. Vice versa. Right? When I say vice versa, I mean in the first table but not in the second. Okay, I don't want to have to type out and what is in the first table but not in the second. I just say vice versa. I think you all know that. Okay, so I'm going to say full outer join. Okay, let's remove this since we want everything. Okay, so this is the full outer join. So let's give it a go. And notice this one had a problem, and then this one had a problem. So notice Postgres gives us both of them. All right, doesn't matter if it was on the first table or the second table, it gives it to us. Of course, we could be more specific and say, give me only those ones. Okay, so where student is missing or grade is missing. Okay, and I hope that makes sense. Okay, so what you'll notice when we run this, we should only get back my semicolon, right? Yes. Okay, so when we run this, we'll notice we get back only those rows that have missing things. Okay, in this case, the first row has missing student. In the second row, it has missing grade. Okay, so those are the different types of joins, and to recapitulate, the whole point of a join is to be able to ask the DBMS questions to get data that answers a question that you are interested in from the DBMS. In our case, we wanted to find out about students and grades, who was missing grades, which grades were given to unknown students or non-existent students. Also, at the beginning, we simply wanted to know for each student, what was their grade. Okay, so remember, with the inner join, everything must match up. It has to be in table 1 and it has to be in table 2. For a left outer join, only if it's in table 1, I'm okay. If it's missing, then show it to me. the right outer join, what is in the second table, what is not in the first table. And to wrap it up, the outer join, full outer join, simply says give me both. Okay, what's missing from this one, table 1, and also what's missing from this one, table 2. So these are the joins that you must know. And so that brings me to the end of this lesson. All right, a somewhat short lesson, but it contains a lot of information that you must know. So in the next lesson, we will see how we can properly construct tables using serial, and how we can tell the DBMS that these primary keys are related, so that when they do joins, the DBMS knows what to do. All right. So normally, what I was doing here, where I was adding in the primary key, that's not how it's done. Okay, but I did it in this lesson just to show you what we are trying to do in terms of solving by using joins. All right. So by making this student ID be an integer, it gave me control to be able to change it or add it. All right. So the takeaway from this course, you should know why we need joins. And the answer is simply because our tables, we have separate tables. And when you're when you're trying to generate a report or something to answer a question, you need to bring the tables back together. All right. Okay, that's it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.